treason, sedition, rebellion. This is the heritage of the American patriot. Those revolutionaries who stood on principle to fight against tyranny no matter the cost. And that spirit lives strong today in the activists and freedom fighters who fight against the authoritarian state. Each in their own way, each with their own mission, united for the cause.
I had the idea to run on a platform of fuck the police prior to actually winning the primary.
I mean, AOC is a drama queen and she's full of shit.
They said, you don't get to tell us no, we're the state health department, and I said, hell no.
You brought a freaking guillotine.
People already pushing back in ways that didn't even need any votes to be cast.
I'm not ratting on anybody, and I did what I did, so you're going to have to give me what the law says you have to give me.
You want to make the world a better place? Have some babies and raise them to not be stupid.
Hope I don't get canceled talking to you.
These are the people whose stories I'm here to share. I'm Justin O'Donnell, and this is Subversive.
Man, governments are not going to like this shit.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, activists, anarchists, shitposters, and you people of the internet, thanks for tuning in to Subversive 84. As always, I'm your host, Justin O'Donnell. Before we get started, just remember, whatever platform you listen on, whether it's YouTube Live, Odyssey, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Anchor, or on the air at LRN, you can help grow the show by liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing it with your friends. If you enjoy the content, you can join the insurgency on Patreon by visiting patreon.com/O'Donnell. Again, that's patreon.com/O'Donnell. And check out our sponsor, snackswag.com, for all your favorite Liberty merch, where you can get some official podcast branded merch from Subversive, some rogue campaign merch for some of your favorite radical asshole campaigns that you love to help people piss off. And my new favorite design are Dare shirts. The Dare shirts are great because what other program warned you about friends like me when you were in high school? So go over to snackswag.com and get your merch today. And if you want to keep in touch between shows, follow me on social media, join our community Discord channel where you can keep up with other fans of the show at any time. And all these links can be found in the description of the video or podcast you're listening to. So make sure to check them out today. But what is today? Today is like every day. There's drama, there's infighting, petty squabbles over the keys to shitposting Twitter accounts. Sometimes it feels like that's all there is to the big L libertarian politics. And most of it's just driven by factionalism and clique culture created by caucuses and their internally focused energy. Why fight the state when we're too busy fighting each other about who should be allowed? Well, the Libertarian Party has turned into a real-world example of Sayre's law in action. The world itself has only gotten worse in the meantime. So thanks for tuning in to Subversive and the fourth installment of No Caucus for Old Men. And welcome back to two of my favorites, the original host and creator of this idea for the show, Twitter's most canceled man, Reed Coverdale, and the crotchety, potato-loving asshole from the Northwest, Idaho Joe Evans. Guys, thanks for coming on. How are you today?
Doing awesome,
well.
Justin. Doing awesome. Yeah, it's great to be back. Great to touch base again with you rogues out there. You know, everything you guys got going on with, Kaufman, New Hampshire. Yeah, you guys are lighting things up, creating opportunities for discussion.
Well, I had a great discussion with somebody the other day pointing out, like, we did like the first one of us together, like 2 years ago, like right at the start of the caucus wars when they really started heating up. And it was basically the three of us as the three people refusing to join a caucus, warning everyone, you're just going to fucking ruin everything. And now we're getting to the point where they've pretty much, well, if not ruined everything, they're suddenly the winning caucuses are even turning on each other.
And that was going to be the case. We all knew it. When you win the way that some of these people decided they were going to win, a lot of people on their friends start looking at them and going, that was some shady ass shit. How long before you start doing that shady ass shit on me? So you got the whole Machiavelli thing, the fear, who's driving what, who's making who do what, under what conditions. How long before one of the caucuses turns on the other? You actually mentioned it earlier today. Nationals coming down on New Hampshire and saying, hey, man, cancel Joe. So it's like,
not national, it's Idaho people. So yeah, out of the blue. And for those of you watching, and for those of you who might be watching out of anger, fear, hate, or spite, go fuck yourselves and sucks next Star Wars left nut. But listen, My platform, my show is not the property or an outlet or an angle for any one particular caucus, ideological group, or like faction within the Libertarian Party or politics in general. I don't even limit the guests that I've had on the show to libertarians. I've had socialists from Ireland, and I've had a British diplomat who was a whistleblower in the Iraq war on. I've had Democrat state reps, Republican state reps. I've had the founding chair of the Objectivist Party on. We don't limit it to one ideological purpose here. It's all about activism and getting shit done. And even within the Libertarian Party, I've had people from the Mises Caucus, people from the Pragmatist Caucus, people from the Radical Caucus, like people from the Secular Caucus, like, for people to come at me when I released the poster and put it on Twitter saying that I was wrong and awful and not considering the Mises Caucus when I was platforming Joe Evans, I'm sorry, but now we're going bigger. I don't owe a platform to anybody, least of all people who've never given me a reason to care about their opinion. Meanwhile, and Reed, Jesus fucking Reed will platform almost anybody.
Like, I cause a lot of trouble on Twitter for being a guy who's banned from Twitter. I'll say that much. I'm good at I'm like a ventriloquist, you know, like make it sound like my voice is coming from somewhere else. You know, it's not allowed on Twitter, but geez, I can destroy I can cause a lot of chaos. So
how long did your most recent stint on Twitter last before you got banned?
As Ulysses Liberty?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I didn't use it for like the first week, and then I was like, all right, I guess I'll start using this, and then I got banned. Before that, I had another one that lasted 3 days. Before that, I had another one that literally lasted 3 minutes, and it got zapped. And then before that, somehow I lasted 9 months on my second account. I still don't get that. Like, you know, I got banned off the first one about a year ago, and then I had another one for like 9 months, and then finally got nailed and looked into it. I was like, what could this be? And they said, oh yeah, it's ban evasion. It's like, really? You figured that out after 9 months and like 15,000 followers that I'm Reed Coverdale? Congrats, guys.
So, like, how do they figure out ban evasion? Like, that blows my mind. If they're tracking like your phone and your IP or some kind of digital fingerprint from your phone or whatever computer you're logged into, why haven't they banned any of the like brand accounts that people who are kicked off of Facebook are also running?
I don't know. I went after the country you're not supposed to go after, so they have their ways of tracking you down and finding you.
With space lasers and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, in that thing, a lot of it comes down to where it is you're broadcasting from. Now, some of the things, you know, Reed tweets from his phone. You know, that's going to cause one signal. A lot of people, you know, they'll tweet from a given IP, you know, their laptop, their computer, get home, start doing the keyboard warrior thing. You know, sooner or later that ends up tracking back. You know, there's only so many different places you can log on from before somebody goes, wait, that looks like, you know. And it's real interesting doing that aspect of cybersecurity with everything that's going on with the internet. Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, got busted. She pops up. She's back down. You know, everybody tries to come in with their little, you know, side pieces. You know, some of them last longer than others simply because, well, one, they're not that prolific.
I'm convinced that there's people that just sit there, wait, watch, and like monitor so they can ban, so they can report people. Like, oh, they're doing ban evasion. Get them.
People have strange highs, you know, the things that get them excited.
Well, and that's one of the big things we fight against here. You know, the whole libertarian thing. Stop fucking with people. You know, what are they doing that's, you know, is fucking with your life?
Voting.
They posting something? What are they saying about you, man? Yeah.
Mourning the death of John McCain. Can't have that.
Oh,
that's one we can't accept.
Yeah. So I mentioned in the intro, I feel like not a lot of libertarians are familiar with, and nobody's made them be familiar with. I know Joe is, but Sayre's Law. Like, Reed, have you ever heard of Sayre's Law?
Not till tonight, I don't think.
Weird, like philosophers always call their theories laws. Generally, they're not. But
no, they're not.
Sayre's law is it's a very simple state. It just says in any dispute, the intensity of feeling is inversely proportional to the value of the issues at stake. And that's how I feel about the Libertarian Party, because let's face it, it's a bunch of people fighting over the keys to a Twitter account that actually has no meaningful impact on the day-to-day lives and politics of their lives.
So true.
And they act as if it's the end of the fucking world when they don't get their way or somebody else gets in charge.
And by the way, I've been consistent about this because I did not like Joe Jorgensen's anti-racism tweet. I thought it was weird the way she phrased it, but I didn't fucking care. It was like, I remember like 2 months later, everyone's still talking about it, and I was like, guys, that was 2 months ago. Like, can't we fucking move on? And I felt that way all the way through. Like, whenever some state affiliate says something that's just like, or I don't, whatever. Like, why does it fucking matter? And we all forget in 3 weeks, unless we don't let ourselves forget. Then,
well, with Joe Jorgensen especially, like, here's the thing. The night of the convention when Joe Jorgensen got the Libertarian Party nomination, myself and Jess Mears, I was quite high at the time, but we decided it would be a fun idea to try and see if we can get Joe Jorgensen trending on Twitter with bots and just spamming Twitter. And we brought the hashtag I'm with her back. Just piggybacked on the fact that there was always people tweeting I'm with her. And we got Joe Jorgensen trending in the #2 spot on Twitter overnight. After that night, I don't think anybody but libertarians ever saw anything she tweeted. like nobody gave a shit. She was in an echo chamber, and we're all in echo chambers. Libertarians are in echo chambers. Unless we do something crazy like insult Meghan McCain, we don't break out of the echo chamber.
Yeah, that's what's interesting to me is the National Party by association has made a little bit of nationwide news, but 98% of it has been New Hampshire, which, I think that's good.
And the interesting thing is you guys, this stuff's rash. It's brash, it's in your face and it's rude, crude. Yeah, and you nail it with the 5% of the Twitter that absolutely loves and endorses that level of shit talk. And when you're watching the Libertarian Party, when you're watching the LNC come back around and endorse it and say, yeah, that's based. Their audience just shrunk to that 5% that goes, yeah, that's based. The other 33 that they're trying to reach in order to be relevant is now looking at him like,
well, here's a question. Is that 33% worth trying to reach? Is it even worth trying to consider reaching people who aren't libertarian already? I think the true market that the Libertarian Party should go after and the Libertarian Party should be targeting is the apolitical, apathetic people who already hold libertarian values but are so disenfranchised with the system that they don't participate, because that is 5 to 7% of the population right there. And while that might not be enough to win elections, it's enough to seriously impact local and public policy.
It is. Yeah. And that's one of the things. Like Idaho, 60% of the state right now is unaffiliated. They can't even vote in the Republican primary without registering as a Republican. Yet we still have 60% that won't affiliate with the Republicans because it's like they're trash. So we got 60% audience here in Idaho that's unaffiliated that we could actually reach out. As long as we aren't coming out with messaging like, let's repeal the 19th, women shouldn't vote,
Sure, but is it worth reaching that 60 some odd % if the message you're reaching with them with isn't a message that's actually going to keep them around and invested? Like, what good can come from Marshall Burt's legacy if he's not reelected? Like, he won in a fluke, let's be honest. And libertarians don't win often. And when they do, they don't win reelection. It hasn't really happened since the 90s in New Hampshire, when 37 libertarians were elected in 92. Only 5 of them were reelected in 94, 4 in 96, and then we didn't have another one until 2002. Like, and that right there, even just those 4 separate elections, is more than the Libertarian Party has won elsewhere in the country combined.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of that depends on the basis of what's going on, because you start looking at the development, reason why you guys lost so much in the ones that followed after was because you literally shifted the entire way Democrat and Republican parties in New Hampshire thought.
No,
Yeah.
I think when I look into it, the reason the Libertarian Party was able to get 37 people elected with a big L, partisan L, next to their names to the New Hampshire State House in 1992 had nothing to do with libertarian values. It had to do with the fact that Ross Perot was on the ballot, that Ross Perot reached that middle 30% of the country with populist nothing values that stood for nothing, that got people excited for somebody who just repeated what they thought. That got people excited, got them out to vote, and it created a third party down ballot wave.
So
And
Andrew Yang is our greatest hope, is basically what you're saying.
if
God,
your care is
no.
about getting into office and getting elected, it probably is as awful as that is. Because let's be honest, how many people did Gary Johnson bring to the Libertarian Party? Probably more than Ron Paul did. Here's the question: where the fuck are they? They're all gone. They don't stick around. They're not long haulers. They're here because Gary Johnson went at the middle. He went at people who they weren't actually libertarian. They weren't actually sympathetic to libertarian values. They were just upset with what their parties had to offer.
Yeah.
And that isn't a recipe for long-term success because that doesn't build a base. The LPNH strategy, I think, it's going to find that you're right, 5 to 7% tops in social media that think it's fucking great. We're finally taking it to them. There's a little bit of overlap of people who voted for Trump even though they didn't like his policies because, well, he fucking finally said something, and people who were tried and true anarchist libertarians who have never voted in their life. But those are the people we want to target. Those are the people we want to get activated. We want to bring into the fold because that changes the dynamic of the entire political system. Not giving us a chance in the next election. That's giving us a chance for our children's futures.
Yeah, I think it was interesting to observe how their reactions varied because it was pretty split right down the middle. If you look at like the ratio, the comments versus likes, it was like literally split down the middle. And that post was obviously provocative with not a lot of exposition. And like the more expositional you go, the less shock, the less viral it'll be. So it's always like finding the balance. But lots of people were just asking, like, why are you guys going after Meghan McCain like this? What is the problem? And then there were hundreds of conversations taking place below the tweet where people were saying, like, look, watch this video of collateral murder. Watch this video of, a drone strike taking out a house, blowing up a bunch of kids, and one guy pulling himself around the room with his legs gone and blood pouring out of his, where his legs used to be or whatever. And it's effective. Like most people, if you just tell them, look, John McCain sucked. He was a war criminal. He voted for every war, blah, blah. I mean, they're just not going to care. They're just be like, yep. But if you say like happy holidays with Meghan McCain, people are going to be like, Jesus Christ, like what the fuck? And then you actually open up an opportunity for a conversation because they want to know, why would you say something so awful and so tasteless? And you're like, well, this is why right here. And then you can really,
I think a lot of people also like a lot of people aren't realizing how much thought is going into these tweets. Like people think, yo, you just shock jocks. I'm like, no, like Reed and Eric, the people who run the LPNH Twitter, they post shit but they aren't posting in a vacuum. They're running it by people getting feedback and testing it too. Like just tonight, me and Reed had a discussion about a tweet that we decided absolutely not. That's actually way over the line. And LPNH won't tweet it.
By the way, it was I never seriously was going to tweet that for LPNH.
I thought, I don't know, like, come on, like I've tweeted worse from my personal account.
Oh yeah, I've tweeted way worse from my personal account, but I wouldn't have put that up on LPNH. It's too much,
right? Yeah, but like we know that like there is a line. The question is, you can't move the line without being willing to cross it.
Mm-hmm.
And politics is and always will be downstream from culture. So you have to first engage in culture. And unfortunately, whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing, culture is social media. And that's a product of technology and product of communications monopolies that have been created by government and technocracy, with institutions like Facebook and Twitter engaging in rent-seeking behavior to monopolize the market of communications.
Yeah, and you're looking at that. One of the things that's going on right now is the massive disenfranchisement from the Republican and Democrat Party. 50 years of politics, nothing's changed. Supreme Court comes in and says, fuck everything you ever thought you knew about rights in the United States. And it's really ironic that we aren't actually doing more monopolization on what it is the Supreme Court came out with. You got
I think it's a great thing. I think this is the first good decision the Supreme Court has had in 246 years, because it's the only one that repeals the worst precedent the Supreme Court has ever set. And that was the incorporation of the 14th Amendment using Marbury v. Madison as precedent, because Marbury v. Madison gave the Supreme Court more power than the other two branches combined, because they can overrule, dictate, and say what the law is. And that is not good for a healthy republic.
Yeah. And that's, we keep coming back to that, RGB Ginsburg, or RBG, was saying, Roe versus Wade, one of the worst decisions ever. It wasn't about bodily autonomy. It wasn't about women's right. It wasn't about, right to abortion. It was about a man's right to practice as a doctor. It had nothing to do with human rights beyond, somebody's licensing. So here we are. We're looking at something that should have been dealt with 50 years ago. 50 years ago, we were looking at women's rights. We were looking at the ERA. We were looking at Roe versus Wade. We were looking at self-determination, and all of this thing. And Josh Smith, let's go ahead and talk about that. Coming out with, let's repeal the 19th Amendment.
To be fair, he stole that from us.
And I get that. But the thing that gets lost in the comments that everybody doesn't think of is, why the fuck did we need the 19th Amendment in the first place?
Sure.
I think that's his point. Is if I read the whole thing, I think that was the point he was making, actually.
Well, and that's one of the things that's interesting, because it's hard to say with him, because sometimes he just doesn't pay attention to what it is he's saying, and he's just, he's in a mood on a given night, and sometimes he posts something and goes, maybe I might have to walk that back a little bit. But it's the same, it's one of those things. You stop, you have the conversation. What was it about the 19th Amendment? What was it that happened between 1776, when women in New Jersey could vote and own property, and 1820, 40 years later, when it's like, no, we're gonna lock them up in insane asylums and give them a lobotomy if the husband doesn't like what they, thinks they're reading too much.
The establishment of the Federal Reserve, 17 different military conflicts, 3 declared wars, the expansion westward, colonization and genocide of native peoples, peace treaties with Canada, Great Britain, and France, and the reintroduction of Christianity at an organized level. That's what happened in that time frame.
Well, we ended up with a state religion. As much as we talk about the founding fathers saying, there will be, the United States is not a Christian nation. It wasn't 20 years after the Constitutional Convention that all of a sudden this manifest destiny started materializing. And it's like, onward, Christian soldiers. And it's like, wait, where the fuck did this come from?
This isn't the shit on Christianity. I mean,
no,
the reality is nobody in their right mind, myself as an atheist and a nihilist, like even I can't say that Christianity as a moral philosophy, not as a religion, but as a moral philosophy, has had a profound impact on the development of Western civilization and culture, and the culture we live in today, and including liberalism and early liberalism and libertarianism, like thinkers like Locke and Bastiat and Hayek, like were all very heavily influenced by Christian values.
Well, by Christ, Christ's teaching, New Testament, what was going on with that? Because let's face it, we've been dealing with the Crusades, and all the westward expansion and manifest destiny was just an American crusade. You were sending missionaries and people fighting for the greater glory of God, moving all across the entire country. The Mormon militia in Utah that ended up occupying a good chunk of the Pacific Northwest. Even moving their little.
They're still there. Trust me.
Yeah, they're still here.
They haven't gone anywhere.
They're still here.
Knocking on your door every Sunday.
Also, like how many problems? How many post World War II problems like that the world has seen, like with all of the never-ending conflict in the Middle East, could have been solved if the United States just gave like half of Utah to the Jews. I think they'd get along with the Mormons swimmingly.
Like better than the Palestinians.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely get along better with them than the Palestinians. You know, it'd be real interesting though. All the Mormons trying to,
actually, a lot of Utah. There's a town named Jordan because it actually, it's geographically similar to where the seas are, where the lakes are, because there's Utah Lake and the Great Salt Lake or whatever, and. I don't know, like it's similar enough, landscape. You really could have done something there, but
it's not like the deserts of Utah are significantly worse of a geography than Israel.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is Israel was given a nice choice of land in the Levant there, right there on the Mediterranean.
Sure.
What they've been doing with desalinization plants there, friggin' top notch. And Olive Gardens,
that's your tax dollars at work.
Yeah. American tax dollars, right? How much do we give them every year?
Less than Ukraine now. So my question is, are they going to accept third place? Because right now they're second place after Ukraine. If Taiwan overtakes Israel, I don't know if they're going to accept that. They're going to be like, yo, that's not okay.
They're going to have to start a war.
Because we're already given 1.1 billion to Taiwan.
I don't even know why we're worried about it. It's not like anybody in the next 2 generations is even paying for this shit. It's our grandkids that are paying for this shit right now.
No, they're not. The default happens way before. Nobody's paying for it. Here's the thing. So I am pro student loan forgiveness at this point. And when it comes to matters of like the federal debt and shit, like 3 years ago, I was not pro student loan forgiveness. But like as I looked at the federal debt, as it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more out of reach. And then when they doubled it overnight by printing $6 trillion and handing it out as corporate favors to their rent-seeking lobbyists, I was like, yeah, you know what? Fuck it. Like collapsitarianism at this point, just fucking forgive it all and walk the fuck away. The dollar's dead anyways.
You're saying you'd rather bail out students than finance Zelensky's cocaine addiction? Is that what you're saying? Or
we should finance my own cocaine addiction.
Absolutely. That's where we're at right now. We are literally on the verge of the collapse of the U.S. dollar. We watched it deteriorate. Where are we at with regards to, how fine the silver was during the fall of the Roman Empire? Are we down to 60% of, the coinage of silver now? The U.S. dollar is currently valued at about 60% of what it was, even 20 years ago. We're just watching the money go down, and with BRICS standing up and all of the other stuff, we're just printing money. There's nothing back, and we're just printing money.
And in the meantime, the only people who care, the only people who see the writing on the wall and understand the consequences of what's happening, libertarians, are too busy jerking each other off and fucking circle jerks about who controls a Twitter account than actually doing something about it.
Speaking of, a Twitter account, I actually have an apology. We put a poll out yesterday that said, if you can only defund one of these countries, which would it be? And so I just had the Israeli flag, the Ukrainian flag, the Taiwan flag, and the Saudi Arabian flag. And after reflection, I realized the only one of those that's actually a country is Saudi Arabia. So I'm sorry.
Fair. I did see one response to this, like, well, if you just defund the United States, it gets all of them.
Yeah, we know.
And that's what it is. You defund the U.S. government, it catches all of them. Truth is Saudi Arabia is just another colony of the U.S. too. Just because we call it a principality rather than a duchy,
Is it, or is it the other way around?
Well, you could make that argument with all of those countries I listed. Is it the other way around?
Who owns who at this point?
At least out of those three, well, I guess you could argue Taiwan, but certainly Ukraine and Israel. It's like, well, maybe Ukraine, problem is like all the interests you have in Ukraine with the Burisma gas company and all that shit and all the fucking, all that stuff going on there. But I guess especially with Israel, like what I don't understand that alliance. You know, Saudi Arabia, at least we get oil out of it, so it's like okay. And then Taiwan, at least we get what do we get in Taiwan? Microchips or something? Or
there's very little as far as like computer processing capability and even just like textile manufacturing now that's not imported from Taiwan.
Yeah, well, the thing about Taiwan becoming part of China, everyone's like, we won't be able to get stuff from them anymore, and it's like
bullshit. The other half of the shit we get from China.
Exactly. Like,
right.
You're saying we don't get it from China already?
China already anyway.
Yeah.
You know, the Republic of Taiwan that we maintain, you know, just to maintain a presence over there, to justify continuing to exploit everything that goes on in the Pacific Rim. You know, our occupation of the Philippines, our occupation of South Korea, our occupation of Taiwan, you know, our occupation of Japan. You know, let's admit, as far as the imperial reach of the United States, you know, other one, these guys, you know, as far as what they're actually able to reach out and touch, because we got troops on the ground someplace, you know, just waiting for some foreign power to run over.
Yeah, Joe, that's a good point. But have you ever considered that if we don't fight them over there, we'll end up fighting them over here?
I think what you've both made is just the two perfect cases for globalism and anarchy merging as a philosophy. Because let's face it, everyone's like, the globalists suck, the globalists are evil. I'm like, too bad. Like, technology increased at such an exponential rate that it is a globalist society, whether or not you like it. Trade is global, communications are global. You can't have your anarcho-primitivist communism and not rely on trade with your foreign neighbors.
Yeah, but there's like good globalism and bad globalism.
Sure, bad globalism is no borders, no governments, total anarchy.
I'm with you there. But the bad globalism is like NATO, United Nations,
right?
You know, that's
but that's not globalism. That's regionalism.
True.
What was it? I'm trying to remember. Dave? No, it wasn't Dave. He's one of the other guys. Came out with a friggin' globo homo. You know, without necessarily.
That's totally a thing.
Well, globalized homogenization. You know, where are we with anarcho globo or global
anarcho homo?
We already got that, man. We already got that. Yeah. More power to them, you know. However they want to present themselves, that's up to them.
Well, I don't know. I do want to talk about the globo homo thing a bit because it's so annoying when the bad guys are so, like, for lack of a better word, gay. Like, they're just so. I mean, at least have the bad guys be like intimidating. I mean, when you're fighting the Soviet Union or the Nazis or even Al Qaeda or something, it's like, wow, those guys are, you know, they're impressive or whatever. But now it's like,
I want my bad guys to be the poster child of everything the left tells me toxic masculinity is. At least then I feel like it's worth fighting.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Megamind when he has to create his own enemy. Right. He's just like, God damn it! Like, come on, guys. You know.
Yeah, you step back and you take a look at the situation. Go with you know, King Leonidas. Yeah, everything about that particular culture. You know, homoeroticism. It was literally friggin' everywhere. It was in the way they raised the kids. It was in everything they did. You know, Athens, they were talking about the boy lovers over in Athens. They were talking about the man lovers, you know, within their own culture, you know, as far as what true love, brotherly love, and manliness was. And, you know, I mean, why not? You know, we talk about elite units where everyone loves everybody else to the point where it's just, you know, full commitment. Total commitment to your shield brother, your sword brother, whatever it is. You know, let's take it all the way down. You know, 300. Why not go there with this toxic masculinity thing? Why does this toxic masculinity, as you pointed out, why does it have to be straight men? I mean, dude, we got leather culture. Leather culture.
I think, like, reality, it's not toxic masculinity. It's not straight gay.
No, it's not.
Fact is,
it
like,
really isn't.
Pop culture has, like, really blurred the lines between good and evil in the way, like, film and art and media has done. Like, Jesus Christ, as a libertarian, anytime I watch, like, a movie, Disney movie or whatever, like a cartoon, like The Incredibles, watching those movies, every movie, the villain always has a monologue. and like they're trying to portray them as the bad guy. And like every time I'm sitting there listening to the villain's monologue, like, nah, they're making a lot of fucking sense right now. Like, if you've never seen The Incredibles 2, the villain was somebody who was like using television sets to brainwash people and whatnot, and like trying to take over by brainwashing everybody. And when they get to their monologue, they go on a big ass monologue about how they're just trying to save people and free people from the government because the government is using mass media to brainwash society into complacency. And I'm like, how is this the bad guy?
Wait, that's The Incredibles? I thought The Incredibles was the guy trying to like kill all the superheroes.
That was the first Incredibles.
Oh, I haven't even seen. I didn't know there was another one, but okay, I'm behind on the times.
Well, and that's one of the things. You go in and take a look at what Disney's been doing. You know, they've been going in and taking every Disney villain for the last 50 years and turning him into, you know, the anti-hero, the dark hero. You know, it's like, no, this was a good person pushed too far by the people you have been selling as the good person for the last 50 years.
We should take everything Justin says with a grain of salt, though, because he says Timothy McVeigh, the only thing he did wrong was not waiting for daycare to get out. So, you know,
if the only people he targeted, if the only people he was targeting was government agents in response for government action, I mean, let's be honest. The non-aggression principle is a very poorly formed philosophy. It is childishly incomplete, and I piss off a lot of libertarians with this on a regular basis. Karen Ann just says I'm wrong and refuses to debate me, but where like nobody can define at what point aggression is initiated. Like how far back in the chain until like is retaliation acceptable? And I think
so.
That's applicable.
If Hani Hanjo or Khalid Al-Mihdhar and Nawaf Al-Hazmi had bought Flight 77, you know, from American Airlines, and then they flew it into the Pentagon, that would have been fine, as long as they like didn't kill any passengers and they bought the plane themselves. Attacking the Pentagon wasn't, you know, that was fine.
I'm already on a list, I'm sure, so I'm gonna go say probably. Except for the fact that they gave the Pentagon an excuse to lose $1 trillion or so that disappeared into a black budget.
I think it was closer to $6 trillion, but you know that,
right?
You know, it's like, well, who cares about $6 trillion now? We got a war to win, folks.
No, but you extend that back further, and like, people who make like arguments for reparations, like not slavery reparations, like land reparations to Native Americans and whatnot, and they're all like, well, Native Americans need to be compensated for the land that was stolen from them. Like, okay, but what about the people they stole it from? And what about the people they stole it from? And what about the people they stole it from? Like, until like the 1900s, stealing shit was how land changed hands internationally.
Yeah, I was asking this question. I was down at a Ron Paul conference, and I was asking some of the antiwar.com guys. By the way, buy these from Top Lobster. He makes these now. But I was asking them, so when does genocide like get excused? Like, how long do you have to wait? Like, because like at this point we can't give the land back to the Indians, and you know if you go back, you know, hundreds of years in Europe, you can't like start exchanging land again because it's over and it's done with. So I was like, what's the, and they one of the guys said a generation. Once a generation has owned it, forget it, it's over.
I mean, then you're starting to look at the pass off, but like one of the things we look at here in the Western United States is, you know, not, you've been in Utah. How much fucking Utah is owned by the federal government? Okay, by being owned by the federal, nobody's actually worked the land. You know, nobody's.
To be fair, you can't really work the land in Utah, but
it's rocks.
Agreed, but the point still stands. You know, if the federal government has never released it, you know, in a landholder position where somebody actually goes in and works the land, why not give it back?
Fair enough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No,
okay, so Mike in the chat has come in clutch with an actual quote from the villain's rant in The Incredibles 2, the screenslaver. Well, you tell yourselves you're being looked after, that your interests are being served and your rights are being upheld, so that the system can keep stealing from you, smiling at you all the while. How the fuck is that a villain?
Sounds like
that sounds like a Libertarian Party presidential candidate.
You're gonna do him dirty like that?
Well, he didn't win. But that's one of the things. You know, we talk about destabilizing the situation.
Mhm.
Free markets is a destabilization. New innovation, it's a destabilization. It's innovative technology that comes in and destabilizes the status quo, creates opportunities for mobility up, down, left, right, sideways. You got to redefine who you are. Transhumanism, the ability to change your gender. How do you define who you are on any given day? This technology continues to develop and be presented, and the people screen slavers fighting against are the people who say, no, we're not ready for that innovation. We're not ready to be different. We're not ready to create something new. We want the status quo, because the longer the status quo lasts, the better we're able to control what happens next.
Well, people just need to look at history to understand the value of disruption. Like, look at history on like a technological progression curve, and it's not a linear progression. It's an exponential progression, because people react to disruption with innovation in every scenario. Like, imagine like people freaking out about the development of AI and self-driving trucks today. Like, oh, it's gonna cost so many jobs and put truckers out of work. They hate automated cashless checkouts because the cashiers need a job. Blah 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 blah. Like, imagine the freaking farrier saying, "You can't invent cars. I need horses to shoe." Like,
that's actually an interesting thing, because right now we're looking at going back on some of this tech. Some of it is we went in, we did the innovation. Then after we did the innovation, we looked back at what the innovation did, and we went, maybe we moved a little too fast on that innovation. Maybe it happened too fast.
But you had to find that out.
Farming. We're looking at global droughts right now. We got farms. Reason why is because people can't plant. The way we've been doing the farming after the Green Revolution in the 1960s, which is just an extension of the bullshit tractors that we put on the farms back in the 1930s. We lost a key part of the agricultural cycle when we went to freaking machines. Now, we could have moved a little slower with that. So let's keep some of the animals. Let's keep some of the cows actually on the farm. Let's keep some of the horses on the farm. Instead we're...
Man, I thought he was going to go to way more Libertarian Party of New Hampshire direction with that, saying that farming went back without machines.
Yeah, well, you guys got bears eating people, so
that's a myth.
Donuts on the back.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
Listen, all right. I love dispelling this. It's one of my favorite things to dispel, even though nobody ever listens. A Libertarian and a Bear Walk into a Bar is a book that circulates where they talk about the Freetown Project's failure in Grafton, New Hampshire. It's a load of shit. Like, sure, the first bear attack in like 30 years happened in Grafton that year, but the second and 15th bear attack in 30 years happened in the same 2-week period in New Hampshire. And it was a result. It just so happened to be 3 years after New Hampshire banned hunting bears.
So it's correlation, not causation.
The hunting bears or the feeding of the bears off the back porch Krispy Kremes.
Yeah, so it turns out when you're not allowed to kill the bears, the population of a territorial aggressive carnivore species gets a little bit antsy when they have to share a mountain with another bear. And so they go looking for another mountain.
Absolutely. Andrew's got a point there with the new food system, grass-fed beef. It's an option we got. Right now we're looking at trying to say, no, you can't do grass-fed. Oh, dude, grass-fed beef, that's natural beef. That's the way we should have been doing it the last 50 years. Last 50 years of freaking subsidizing corn to feed beef. Why did we do it? That's not libertarian.
They're trying to get rid of the beef industry and beef farming, cattle farming altogether. They're trying to force you to go vegan or eat bugs because fucking farts. They're worried about cows farting.
We had 40 million buffalo roaming the plains, and somehow cow farts are a problem,
Right. I mean, and thank God, I thank God for the gluttonous nature of American culture right now, and the fact that I think that's the line people aren't willing to let get crossed. You're not taking my keeping us from Big Mac.
It's what's keeping us from fighting. It's what's keeping us from fighting a civil war too. Like, some people are like, civil war? That sounds. Oh wait, you mean I'm gonna have to like stay outside and like not have a Big Mac every? Never mind. Like, forget it.
Yeah. But like Europe, where they're complacent enough to listen to the government, freaking Denmark, when they said no, they tried to shut down 30% of the beef ranches in the country, and they like, what do? They're just going to put down the fucking cows, like insane. And the farmers started trying to pull a Canada and tried to pull a freaking trucker protest on the Capitol. It's insane where they're literally going to starve their own population, which is already freezing and doesn't have clean water.
I was going to say they're not going to have heat this winter, so if you take their beef away too, that's not going to help.
They're not going to have heat until Ukraine wins that war, but Ukraine's not going to win that war as long as they keep selling all those U.S. military donations on the black market. Like Denmark, when they started that little trucker protest to bring all their tractors to the Capitol and lock down the Capitol and barricade it with tractors, the cops started shooting at them. The next day, they showed up with tanks. And I'm sitting there like, where the fuck did they get Russian and Polish and Ukrainian tanks? Oh, never mind. I get it. It's insane. Like, you can get Stinger missile on the black market in Europe right now for $30,000.
Yeah.
So
it's not fair.
I mean,
I know. It's bullshit.
I wish I was as well funded as the Taliban or the Ukrainian army. It's not fair.
Yeah. The entire Western civilization is about ready to go full anarcho. Where people are talking about shutting down our trucking, shutting down our food supplies. You're only going to be able to drive your truck so many miles with what it is you got in the back. Well, the only solution to that is turn around and localize your entire supply chain. Andrew
California can't do that. Look at California. California simultaneously in the same day in their legislature passed a ban on the sale of new gas-powered vehicles after 2035. Only electric vehicles allowed. And then in the same day passed a rationing of electricity due to high demand and inability to meet supply. Like, they don't even see it when it's in front of them.
And I honestly don't know what's going on with California these days. You're looking at the situation, you're thinking, how can people this dumb be running the country? And then you step back and you realize, well, take a look at who's voting for them.
Yeah, democracy, baby.
Democracy. Welcome to and this is another thing that gets interesting, with the topics that's going on. Libertarian Party's coming out anti-democracy. No, we're not coming out anti-democracy. We're coming out anti-mob rule. We set up fucking rules for a reason. It was supposed to be by consensus. We were not supposed to be running a fucking government where a majority could violate the will of other people, willy-nilly.
The only good thing about California is how big it is. Because it's so big and all of that like insane leftism is consolidated into one spot, it means they only get 2 senators.
There is an argument for that. The fact that they only get 2 senators, which is one of the things you actually got Californians going, in the Senate. No, dude, we really don't want to end the Senate because the last thing you want is the breadbasket going the way of California. Ruled by a majority of oligarchs that are sitting in Washington, D.C. Yeah, Benzo, I'm not sure who it was that said that, diet communism.
Jeremy and Rachel Maddow got pissed.
Well, it's true. I mean, I try to remind people who love democracy so much that Hitler was democratically elected. It wasn't a coup. Like when he originally got elected, it was completely democratic. And then he started dismantling the way the German government was run from within. So that's democracy. Like as long as you have enough people.
And that's part of the problem. That is what democracy is. And it's one of the problems we have with the U.S. right now. We wrote a fucking constitution for a reason. The constitution was supposed to defend the rights of the people, all the time.
Right.
We started out with a constitution that automatically said, nah, you're black skin. You're only counting for 3/5. By the way, because you're not landed, you don't get to vote.
So like the worst part of the democratic election that elected Hitler was under Germany's parliamentary system. Hitler didn't win the election, by the way.
No, he didn't.
Second. It was a 3-way race, and he got 36% and got second. But because of their parliamentary system, that meant he got to be prime minister, which he was then able to give himself more power even after losing an election.
Right? Just how in hell did that,
Because they tried the first time and they failed, right? And then he went to prison, and that's when he wrote Mein Kampf and everything. And then they won
and that's when
second place the next time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another problem. As long as we're talking about issues, Dave Smith, he comes out with his comment, World War II, Germany wasn't the only bad guy.
There was no good guy.
Now, I got issues with his messaging in the way he put it. Reason why is because when he comes out, he says, you have to be bad to beat bad. America was bad. Britain was bad. Everybody on the Allies, we were bad. You had to be bad to beat the bad.
Sure. World War II did not end. Like, you didn't stop the genocide of the Jews without genociding Germans by firebombing Dresden.
Well, and the thing is World War II still didn't end the genocide of the indigenous Americans.
Right.
No.
We had code talkers on Utah Beach. We had code talkers in, the East. They came back from that, and their daughters were still being sterilized.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, the British killed 10 million Africans right before World War II. And then the Russians, whom we allied with, they killed 20 million people after World War II.
The Canadians were putting native children in residential schools and mass murdering them till the 1990s. That was a big story that happened during COVID that everyone brushed under the rug and forgot about, when they freaking dug up a mass grave at a Canadian state school of kids that were mass murdered by the Canadian government and covered up.
Well, what I find interesting is so many people who are good on the wars of today, as in they realize they're lying to us about how good we are and how bad they are, whether it's Syria or Iraq or Afghanistan, whatever it is. They just believe everything in history. In Vietnam, we were totally fighting that war to stop communism, or World War II was completely over ending the Holocaust, or the Civil War was totally over slavery, or whatever. They never think wow, when you have these giant armies fighting each other with hundreds of thousands of men in them, maybe it just turns into a mass murder thing where it's people serving their own interests and furthering their own goals.
Well, and that's what it was during World War II. Every major player was running a state capitalist, culture, economy. The Russians, it was state capitalism. The party owned and ran everything. U.S., FDR, it was state capitalism. The politicians were building Tennessee Valley Authority. They were building Hoover Dam. They were printing funny money to pay people to build shit. That was government owned and government ran. Right. Britain, France, Italy, Italy friggin' codified fascism. Corporations, government, stronger together, industry, stronger together. Which was nothing more than a copycat of what FDR and, we were doing before him. So what were we doing? What was our real role in everything that was going down? Because at the end of the day, we bought propaganda that said we were going over to fight the good fight, while we were still doing everything we were told we were going to fight against to our own people here in the U.S. at the time.
And to be fair, fascism and communism, they are that similar. They I think it's Hayek who said fascism is just what you get when communism proves an illusion. And
it's all hyper authoritarianism. It is literally, we've given the government the ability to control industry.
Yeah. I think the best example of that's actually China. Everyone bitches and moans about communist China, but China is more a fascist state than a communist state.
They really are.
Oh, yeah.
And they might even be more capitalist than the United States.
Yeah. Their foreign policy is, that's for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of, I do think China is actually primed to start making military moves overseas, in mass scale. They just last week forgave all outstanding debt to 14 different developing countries.
Yeah, I think they're gonna fucking fall on their face pretty soon, within the next couple decades. It's not looking
and
good.
Here's the thing, this shit in Ukraine with Russia and Ukraine, at everyone I know with military experience, tactical understanding, and like an appreciation of military history knew it was going to stall out exactly like it is. Well, everyone's like, oh, Russia's terrible. Russia's going to, the big bad. I'm like, Russia has been a paper tiger since the fall of the Berlin Wall. They haven't been able to project force. They don't have consistent supply lines. Like, since they got their entire military fucking slaughtered and exhausted all of their supply chain resources in Afghanistan, they haven't been able to rebuild it. And the fall of the Soviet Union just solidified that fact. In 2008, when Russia invaded Georgia, a postage stamp country the size of Maine, Georgia didn't lose. Like, Georgia was able to fight Russia to a draw there, and they had the military budget of a Marine Corps battalion's weekend beef jerky supply. And like, when Russia invaded Ukraine, everyone's like, they have generals on Fox News predicting Russian air superiority within 3 days, blah blah blah. I'm like, nah, Ukraine's gonna, like, they're gonna get in, and then Ukraine's gonna push him back to the disputed territory, and it's gonna stall there for a decade. I think that's about to change, because India is doing joint trainings and drills with Russia. China is forgiving debt of a whole bunch of developing countries, and every one of those developing countries happens to have deep water ports and export facilities that China has been building over the past 20 years. And China is about ready to launch their next generation projection capability, because they've been building nuclear powered supercarriers for the past 10 years, while the US has been spending trillions of dollars in Afghanistan.
Well, the thing is we talk about that. And, you know, for the last 50 years, one of the things that's always been big on the military schedule is, at what point is China going to be a superpower that's actually capable of turning the global powers into some sort of multipolarity?
Within the next 12 months is my prediction.
Well, and that was one of those things. 2020 was supposed to be the target date, you know, by most of the plans. You know, and literally, you know, ever since 2000, we literally did everything possible to guarantee that happened. We wasted money in Afghanistan. Yeah, we have the Gerald Ford carrier. You know, it's one of 11 carrier fleets here that the U.S. is capable of putting anywhere on the planet in under, 7 days. You know, but we got.
Well, here's the crazy part: the Gerald Ford is the most advanced aircraft carrier, and it itself is probably the second most powerful military on the planet. Just the Gerald Ford's carrier group itself could be the second most powerful military force on the planet. It is the only Ford class carrier we have in operation. And I'm not advocating that the U.S. needs to spend another $1 trillion and build more carriers. I'm just saying that in the past 10 years, if you've looked at any of the leaked intelligence photos or the promotional materials or the propaganda that China has put out about their project to build these 10 carriers that they're rolling out simultaneously, because while the U.S. builds one at a time, China leverages the economy of scale there and puts them all in one shipyard and builds them simultaneously. They are identical clones of the Gerald Ford. They got the intelligence and the plans for the Gerald Ford, and they are building 10 of them.
Go figure. I wonder which president sold those plans to him.
Probably Netanyahu.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I know, I'm serious, like 100% serious. Like that's happened a few times. We give the Israelis military technology or intelligence or whatever, then they sell it to the Chinese. So
yeah, but at the end of the day, when it comes down to, we talk about global influence, World War II could have ended without U.S. getting involved in any way, shape, or form. And we still would have come out on top, because everybody would have had to come to the U.S. to buy everything that got blown to holy living bits during World War II.
The only reason the U.S. is a superpower is because of World War II. The only reason the U.S. is a superpower today, the only reason the United States has any global influence whatsoever, is because every other industrialized nation was leveled.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and here we are, we're looking, coming back, World War III, we're still in a situation, the U.S. economy is about ready to collapse. Money doesn't mean anything anymore. We're looking at the Weimar Republic 2.0, global collapse, cultural collapse, economic collapse. We're looking at people making money selling themselves. Who can be the most outrageous? What's the most diabolical thing that somebody can do these days? You got people like us sitting here talking shit.
Speaking of talking
You
shit,
know?
Andrew has a question for both Joe and Reed. Why do you have these bullshit status flags on the wall?
This is, you'll excuse me for mine, won't you, Justin? It's the one flag you'll let go.
I will. And to defend Reed's point, LPNH had a tweet that kind of got overshadowed by all the controversy in the past week, which I think was the greatest Libertarian Party affiliate tweet ever sent.
Bring it up on the screen, Justin.
Oh, I gotta find it. Oh, hold on.
I think I'll send it to you. You sent it to me.
No.
So while you're working on that, Andrew, one of the things is these flags mean different things to a lot of different people. Okay, now to your average anarchist, we look at them and we go, fuck. Yeah, status flags, it's just allegiance. It's another frigging collectivist ideal. But the thing is, to an awful lot of the collectivists that we're trying to reach out to, this flag, this one right here, represents our veterans, represents a history in the United States, represents our fight for freedom, regardless of, what the truth of the situation was. Yeah, absolutely. Regardless of the truth of the situation was, we had a shit ton of friggin' propaganda, for the last 50 years from, the day my parents were born, telling us that Old Glory stood for something other than, what it was that was done.
Sure.
We still
also
believe
tell
in the Constitution, despite the fact that, if you actually read what the Constitution said at the time it was written and by who it was written, it's straight up fucking bullshit. There was no liberty and justice for all. There was no,
super tame. For us, it is. Yeah.
So it is super tame, and
it is.
And before I get into Joe's, I think Joe's making valid points that I do want to disagree with from a principle perspective. But LPNH is just MAGA light. No, folks, MAGA is America fourth, not America first. It's Taiwan, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. We're America second, right after New Hampshire. That's the most LPNH tweet possible. I mean, come on. We're talking national divorce secession. That's the way forward. We're getting called out, though, so we might need to spice it up and reissue this, Reed.
Sure we can.
Because it's not our usual flavor of fucky. So.
No, but you're right, Ben. So, and a lot of this is who it is we're trying to target, who it is we're trying to bring back around. Now, like the Great Seal, state of Idaho, yes, we're one of the most authoritarian, pissant little fucking states in the world right now, being overrun by dominionists who want to tell us that we can't smoke our dope and that we can't marry multiple partners because some law that was written back in the 1880s. Yeah.
Wait, isn't Idaho a Mormon stronghold?
Dude, no. In order for Idaho to become a state, the Catholics came in and actually disenfranchised the entire Mormon population. You weren't allowed to vote if you had more than one wife. The women were.
I can get down with the Mormons over, even though they believe
slaveholders at the time. So in order for Idaho to become a state, the Mormons had to give up all their slaves. And that was one of the other things because it was above the parallel. The entire Mormon population was just disenfranchised from the get-go. So this entire idea, the fundamentalist LDS, occupying Idaho and being, running these polygamist, lifestyle things, that was gone in 1880 when we turned Idaho into a state.
Liberty died when polygamy was outlawed. All right.
I can get down with the Mormons, the magic underwear and the polygamy or whatever. But
Mormon culture seems oppressive as fuck. It seems tyrannical, oppressive, and dictatorial as fuck. But they only apply it to Mormons. People who willingly choose to follow it.
Is the Catholics believe they're literally eating a dude when they have their cracker, and they believe it turns into the body of Christ on the way down the throat, and that's just too much. I'll take the magic underwear and the golden tablets and the I get my own planet after I die over that. It's just that's just too. It's a bridge too far for me. You got to hand it to the Mormons, though. The Jews just think the Jews and the Muslims think they get this country, where the Mormons are like, fuck that. We get this planet, a whole planet to myself after I die. It's pretty fucking clever.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ben. So Joseph Smith has spoken. Yeah, it's one of those things. A lot of the people are still tied to what these symbols represent. Whether there was any truth to what we were told they meant at the time they were created. Most of us here, we all know it's bullshit. I know it's bullshit. And this was part of it was trying to reach out to the people, calling, the veteran. We went out and we fought for the greater glory of God. We went out and procreated for the greater glory of God. Manifest destiny for the greater glory of God. And that is a theme. It's an extreme theme here in the state of Idaho right now. But what is the greater glory? God gave us all fucking free will. So why the fuck are we running around telling people that they can't do some shit? We're telling people you can't smoke dope. God gave us every seed on the fucking planet so that we could do with it what we needed. The
Bible also does very specifically say eat cows. So vegans are satanic.
This is true.
God gave us 7 different animals that we could eat. We could eat sheep. We could eat goats. We could eat cows. 7 different. These were clean animals. These were the animals that were the animals of the field that we could go out and harvest and raise.
There's nothing with a cleft hook.
Yeah, no, and we do have the bread, and the
wait. Okay, it's not if they do the sacrament with the bread. Do they believe it literally turns into the body of Christ as they eat it? Because the Catholics are into that. Look that up, Andrew. I don't know. Catholics are the only ones. Like the Catholics, they have that, and then the kitty diddling. That's kind of their trademark. So the Catholic Church is Epstein's island for poor people.
Well, come on. Okay. To be fair, Idaho, we were allowing, dirty old men to get married to 14-year-old kids 2 years ago.
Did Thaddeus Russell live there?
Yeah. Well, I'm. It's probably why Wood won't come visit us anymore. No. 2 years ago, we actually went through the process, and at first we came out with this rule that said, nobody under 16 can get married, nobody under 18 can get married, to anybody that's more than 3 years older than them, and nobody under 16 can get married.
How young was Brigham Young's youngest wife?
I don't know, probably 12, 13.
Because that's the Muslim standard. Like Muslims have like a rule: you cannot have more than 4 wives because that's how many Muhammad had, and they can't be younger than, I forget how young his youngest was when he married her, but that's the youngest age. Like that's their standard. But like Brigham Young had 56.
Yeah. Now Brigham Young had fairly large harem. That's one of the interesting things that you start taking a look at an awful lot of these guys that ended up with harems like that. You got an awful lot of the apologists, coming out and saying, no, Brigham Young wasn't actually fucking all of them. Muhammad wasn't actually fucking all of them. Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. He called them wives. Solomon had his freaking harem. Yep. Now, he may not have been fucking them because he realized that these women knew how to run a fucking state. They knew how to fucking run a society. They knew how to get business fucking done. So you bring them in, you teach them how to do the clerking, you teach them how to, do the books, you teach them to read, you teach them to write. Muhammad had to marry 5 different women in order to dictate every one of his fucking thoughts to, because he was an illiterate fucking bastard.
Seriously, you put this is one way we can make the best argument for repealing the 19th Amendment. God forbid they actually get in power and it's all women. Have you ever seen the danger and power of just 2 women living together when they stop fighting over petty shit and how efficient they are? Imagine 56 of them who learn how to live together peacefully. That is a dangerous form of government. Like, you will never escape that tyranny. Like, the efficiency that they could manage a household that they've like fine-tuned, I'd be terrified.
You should be terrified.
We don't like efficient government. The best thing about government is that it doesn't work.
Right.
Otherwise, our philosophy falls apart.
Yeah, I walk into work and I saw the flag at half-mast, and I said, yes, another bureaucrat bit it.
Time to make another tweet. Wait, so who are you hoping is next? I've seen your diagram.
Well, has Joe? Let's ask Joe. Actually, I'm going to pull up a little advent
diagram.
It's an advent calendar. Okay.
Advent calendar.
Yeah, it's
you're killing me. Because I'm all about letting women be in charge of themselves.
Themselves.
Yeah, themselves.
That's
where it is.
That's what we're about as libertarian. Individual sovereignty, bodily autonomy.
But that's not what democracy's about.
Yeah. So we're gonna have Joe on board with repealing it by the end of the night.
All right, Joe. So I have a libertarian.
We had this discussion already. It's like, why did we need the damn thing in the first place? Okay, go ahead. Give me the question.
So the Libertarian Advent Calendar, there's 12 months to pick from, so we can have 12 holidays a year, and we need to ask, like, this is no particular orderism, so I didn't put an order and assign months to these people, but like, who do you think should be next?
Okay, it's going to take a little bit to load up on my end. I don't know why your screen share doesn't like to play nice with my system. Oh God.
Man, I'm gonna be so happy when Hillary dies. I don't know if there's one that tops that.
Cheney. Here's the thing, like
Cheney.
Here for all of the falsifications.
Who's is that Barr?
Yep.
Barr's got to go. Barr has got to go. That motherfucker.
Gates. Okay. Robert Gates on there. Yeah, Robert Gates is my Robert Gates or Dick Cheney are my true personal next.
No, you don't have Bill Kristol or Robert Kagan or Richard
we should do a 31-day a full advent calendar for 31 days.
So.
That's
got plenty of fucking options.
Barr's got to go. Barr's got to go. Department of Justice. That motherfucker was in charge. For Ruby Ridge.
Sure. Okay.
And Janet Reno had inherited his Department of Justice and FBI. She hadn't even been in charge a month when Bill Barr's Department of Justice did Waco. Bill Barr, I hold that motherfucker responsible for both of those atrocities. Dead American kids. Bill Barr. Fuck that.
I'll make an argument to read then about why Cheney is a better next than Clinton.
I'm totally open to that argument.
For all of Clinton's flaws, her daughter isn't a public figure or mouthpiece.
That's true. Dude, when Liz Cheney is crying over Dick Cheney's casket, we're going to have a whole new line of photo ops ready to go.
Yeah. That field day will...
Yeah, dude, Liz Cheney is arguably worse than Meghan McCain. Like, I mean, it's tough. Like, I was making this point earlier that Meghan McCain, even though she technically never like signed with a pen any legislation to go murder a bunch of people, she totally advocated for it and arguably normalized it to more people than John McCain did.
Here's the thing. John McCain normalized it to Republicans and traditional conservatives. Meghan McCain normalized it to the audience of The View. Exactly. And that is way worse and more dangerous and like
harder to get rid of.
Spike Cohen convinced me of this because do you know what the most dangerous voting bloc and demographic in this country is? Soccer moms. He's right. Minivan moms are the silent vote. They're the ones who don't voice their opinions to their friends, their family. Mom. They just fucking take care of their kids, manage their households, but when they fucking vote, it's an unaccountable, unpollable demographic.
This is true.
Yeah, well, and you're looking at the soccer mom demographic, and that one's a solid target for a number of different reasons. And what Meghan McCain did, normalizing it for soccer moms. This was a just war. She normalized, violence and death and droning of kids as a just war. So Meghan McCain, in a lot of ways is worse than her father ever was. You're looking at the same thing with the Cheneys. Here we got a woman who's normalized everything her father has done to, this demographic. And it's like, how are we ever going to stop war if you go around normalizing dead kids to mothers?
Sure. I can't. I can't say Meghan McCain is worse than her father ever was because of all of the war criminals: Bush, Obama, Robert Gates, Dick Cheney, Condoleezza Rice, Hillary Clinton, all of them. Everyone involved in the Afghan and Iraq military conflicts, the people responsible for the deaths of 1 million civilians and an estimated 400 to 500,000 children over the course of 20 years, the worst of them is John McCain by far, because John McCain is the only one of them who actually experienced the horrors of war in all of its full capacity and force as a human being and left that willing to push it on other people.
He accidentally bombed one of his own ships too, or like caught it on fire or something. So, but he's only good on torture because he was tortured. Like that's the only thing he's good on.
Right, but like John McCain knew full well, how bad a war is from every perspective, as a combatant, as a POW, as a refugee, and as a fucking hero. Like John McCain knew every level of how bad it would be for the next generation of this country, and still supported it.
Yeah, fuck him.
Oh yeah,
he was a
George
maverick,
Bush.
though.
Yeah, George Bush was off pulling a tour in the National Guard before they got deployed. So, like, he didn't actually know what was going on in Vietnam.
I don't think he knew what was going on in Iraq either. He was kind of just like, Dick, what's going on? Yeah.
Well, and that's a lot of it, you know. And I honestly think George Bush has an awful lot of regrets of what he got the nation involved in.
I felt like that was a soft apology he made when he accidentally screwed Ukraine up for Iraq. He's like, with Putin's completely unjustifiable unilateral invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that
Iraq too. And it was like, whoa, like, are you admitting that now?
Fucking Freudian slip out the ass. Like, oh my God.
Well, he's getting up there in years these days. You know, him and Biden's never met a war he didn't like.
Well, here's the thing. John McCain did meet wars he didn't like. John McCain first ran for Senate as an anti-war diplomacy first candidate. And the first wars in John McCain's tenure in the Senate, he opposed. The first Gulf War, John McCain was an opposition voice for, and he opposed sending troops to Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. And then immediately after come the Balkans and Kosovo, John McCain was pro boots on the ground, occupy everything, long-term stability. Like something happened in like a 3-year period in the early 90s where John McCain went from being someone who firmly understood the horrors of war, ran on that platform, stuck to his principles during an arguably just police conflict. I wouldn't call it a war, a just war. There's no such thing as a just war, but a just policing conflict where people asked for help. We went, helped, and it was a limited conflict, and we got the fuck out.
Yeah.
And you can make an arguable justification that I still won't disagree with for the first Gulf War. Opposing that to all of a sudden, we're the world's police and responsible for everyone's safety and security.
The money started flowing. That's the only thing I can think of is the money started. You know, he was in there,
or maybe that tumor was there a lot longer than we knew about.
You know,
we worship the tumor. Maybe it's the tumor's fault. Maybe the tumor's what fucked with him. You know, just saying that would be bad. You know, maybe the tumor's the villain. Maybe he's in heaven because it was the tumor fucking him. You know?
Listen, Megan, if we're wrong, we're sorry.
I'm not sorry. Fuck Megan. But if we're wrong about your dad, he'll forgive us.
Yeah.
This is one we need to reach out. We need to make sure that people understand. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. If you're coming out as pro-war, if you are somehow suggesting in any way, shape, or form that bombing kids is okay,
if the price is worth it.
You're wrong. You're wrong as a friggin' football bat. You know, I don't care.
I take it back. Madeleine Albright the worst.
Oh, dude, when Hillary Clinton was
worth it. Comment makes Madeleine Albright the worst human being in the history of the planet.
When Hillary Clinton was lionizing Madeleine Albright when she died, like, dude, what a moment! Holy shit!
the clip of her being asked on 60 Minutes, like, reports suggest that our conflict has cost the lives of 500,000 children in Iraq, and her saying it was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
God, she's so evil. Yeah, she's the worst.
That should be enough. Like, just pumping that clip out relentlessly, consistently, should be enough to turn every soccer mom in the country into an anti-war activist.
When did she die? 6 months ago? I couldn't believe how long she lived. She was fucking old. Evil dies old, I guess.
And the funny thing is right now, we take a look at Afghanistan.
March 23rd.
Yeah.
Okay, Afghanistan was 20 years. Okay, every child, every drone bombing that happened in Afghanistan, 20 years. 20 years is long enough that every soccer mom should be able to look at their 7-year-old out there on that soccer field, chasing that ball up and down, and realizing that 7-year-old kid in 13 years is going to be wearing army boots at the pointing edge of the spear, waiting for one of these accidental friendly fired drone bombs to take out his fucking squad, and say, wait, not my kid.
Yeah, it seems like we went long enough between Vietnam and Afghanistan that people forgot about the potential. Like, Vietnam was the first American war and American conflict where children ended up at the end of the war, kids who had grown up got drafted to walk the same patrols their fathers were killed on. Yeah. And Afghanistan was the same case. When we pulled out of Afghanistan, there was troops in that withdrawal who were not born when that war started.
Yeah, that flag right there is still coming home, draped over coffins. Draped over coffins of kids that weren't born, when we started the war in Iraq, when we started, the war in Afghanistan. We still have troops in Afghanistan. We still have troops in Iraq. We have troops in Syria. We have troops in,
Yeah. Yeah, 9/11 is going to be old enough to drink this year.
I joined the army after, Somali, Black Hawk Down.
Mm-hmm.
There was a fucking propaganda behind Black Hawk Down that said, that's what I want to do. I want to go do that.
I actually I worked for one of those guys, not one of the actors, but one of the guys who was actually there in Somalia in that conflict that the movies made after. When I was doing Power Lines, he was like our representative from the utility who was kind of watching what we were doing. But
one of my high school history teachers was one of the Rangers, and
really?
Now he writes children's books for a living.
Nice.
So, but I remember when the movie came out, he told everyone, he made it a homework assignment. You have to go see this movie this week. And then we came in Monday, and he's like, everything you saw in the movie theater was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
It's propaganda. Like, he would show up on October 3rd every year in his full dress greens. And I remember, 2003. I'll never forget this. It was one of the weirdest things I'd ever had a public school teacher do in my freaking experience. He walks into class in his full Class A dress greens, and just class is rowdy. No one's in the high school sophomores. We don't give a fuck about anything. And he's just like, listen up. It's been 10 years since I've killed anybody. Which one of you stupid fucks wants to push your luck?
Wow.
Whoa.
That class was the most well-behaved class for the rest of the year.
I bet.
But he actively discouraged kids from attending recruiting. He, when the recruiters came to give everyone the ASVAB senior year, he was standing outside and are you sure you want to do this? No. And he would stand in the way and not let 17-year-olds in. He would only let 18-year-olds in to take the ASVAB.
Yeah.
The ASFLAB test. Yeah, I took the ASVAB test in high school. Yeah, I don't know. I remember I was talking to Marine Corps recruiters and then Army recruiters, and my parents really didn't want me to join, and they talked me out of it. But that's actually a great tweet we put out a couple weeks ago. No one's going to remember it because it was before the fucking shitstorm. But it was remember the tweet they made last year about child labor and how it's, children can learn more at a job site or whatever. It was a picture of who was it? Yeah, it was a picture of like the cop who wasn't who was looking at his phone with the Punisher symbol on it in Uvalde instead of.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
it was another picture of some drag queen story hour or whatever, and then there was another picture of an army recruiter, and I forget what the fourth one was, but it just said job sites are way safer than this for your kids or something. It was a great tweet, but no one's gonna fucking remember it at all. But
no, so the caucus wars, circling back to that, you bring up the the legalized child labor tweet. That was really the start of we'll call it the modern age of caucus wars in the Libertarian Party. That was really the first thing LPNH did to set the whole fucking party ablaze. People losing their minds and going nuts about disaffiliating. How dare you say that? Gary Johnson got involved. Fucking stupid.
Yeah, where
nonsense.
was Gary Johnson for the latest ones? He's just done or what?
Learned his place,
Well,
probably.
I mean, you reach a point where your give a fuck's just busted. It's like LP's going to be the LP. You know, the people in charge are going to say what they're going to say, and it doesn't matter what messaging you try and do. You know, you can come in as a pragmatic, policymaker and say, you know what, women deserve they deserve the right to have a say over what happens to their own body. Next thing you know, you got somebody coming back saying, no, bitch deserves to die in childbirth before, the doctor can excise what's killing her. You talk about, well, bodily autonomy. We need to make sure that everybody involved in our communities has the right to vote. And you got Singball, coming back and going, repeal the 19th Amendment. And it's like you're trying to create dialogue. You're trying to create discussion. And it's like, where do you stand when the people that are supposed to be helping you promote the message turn around and come right back behind you and say, nah, the Libertarian Party believes, women need to be barefoot and pregnant. And it's like, dude, there's 8 billion people on the fucking planet. Let a woman do what a woman wants to fucking do.
Sure. So there's definitely things where it gets like, it might be counterproductive. The 19th Amendment joke, which, by the way, has been going around in circles since I think Dickie started it like a year ago.
Right. It's been around for a while.
Yeah, it just finally blows up. Literally, like, it wasn't until Jeremy Kauffman made a 19th Amendment joke that it blew up and people started getting upset about it. But, like, Mises Caucus people have been making it constantly as a joke, and everyone's known it's a joke. There's a very, very well-known meme that Dickie Walnuts made, replacing the cover of the Industrial Revolution and its consequences were a disaster for the human race with the 19th Amendment and its consequences were a disaster for the human race. It's a hilarious meme in the context of knowing the discussion if you're in Tower Gang's fucking shitposting fan circle. Like, that's fine. And it never escaped that echo chamber until Jeremy tweeted it. And that's when people started getting mad and losing their minds. That kind of messaging, sure, is not productive in getting out of when it gets out of the echo chamber to the people that even we're trying to reach, radical libertarians, because even some of those women are like, hey, well, fuck you. And they're otherwise our allies. But
Katie Nicole there, absolutely. If that's what you want to be, more power to you. Please.
I love Kate.
If that is what you enjoy, I want you to go out and enjoy it to your heart's fucking content.
Yeah. There's a joke we have here in New Hampshire. All the women who come here, and once a woman moves to the Free State Project, immediately gets married and enters a semi-permanent state of pregnancy, because we are breeding for freedom. But no, I think the real question is like that kind of messaging isn't helpful, but is it actually hurtful? Because let's be honest, that middle of the road, that average voter, the people in the middle that like the pragmatist caucus is trying to reach, they're trying to reach them by diluting and watering down what libertarian messaging is. And while that might get you votes in the short term, it doesn't actually change culture. It doesn't actually change politics, and it doesn't actually change anything long term, and it doesn't preserve any gains you might make. The reality is an understanding of the Overton window is absolutely necessary when you're going to engage in fringe politics. We are not mainstream politics. We are not Republican and Democratic parties. We are not trying to compete with the Republican and Democratic parties. We are not capable, able, or like in the same playing field as them because we're not in the Overton window. And the Overton window is incredibly important. You cannot move the Overton window more towards liberty. And by the way, Joseph Overton, the political scientist who created the Overton window and like wrote about it, and it was named after him posthumously, was a fucking Libertarian Party anarchist who came up with this theory. And so like libertarians should be like well tuned in understanding it. It's our own goddamn creation from our own movement. But the original scale of the Overton window, it wasn't to place ideas and policies in relation to each other. It was, you had a scale of more freedom and less freedom. And it goes from inconceivable, radical, possible to policy in the middle. The idea is to move the window more towards more freedom so that what is inconceivable now is pragmatic in the future. Right. You do not do that by becoming pragmatic yourself and moving yourself closer to the less freedom side. Because if you're moving your own policies closer to less freedom, that is a compromise of the integrity of the position you're trying to instill on culture. And compromise, as much as people love the word compromise, 246 years of political compromise gave us this tyrannical system out of the beautiful libertarian republic that the founders created.
So yeah, what do you think about this, Joe? I want your thoughts.
Okay.
So I don't think every state affiliate should be like New Hampshire, and I don't think the national party should be like New Hampshire. I think New Hampshire, is kind of the tip of the spear. It's the lightning rod that opens up space for whether it's Spike Cohen or Dave Smith or whoever it is to kind of like say, all right, that's a little far. This is what I think. But it's doing what Justin is talking about. It's shifting the allowable opinion, because before, what Dave Smith or Spike Cohen or Justin Amash or whatever would say might sound insane. But if the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire is going to ratchet it up to 10 and say, fuck that, we're going to say this.
You're doing 11. Let's call it what it is.
But it's working. And here's the thing. It might not be working for Idaho. It's working in New Hampshire, though. The child labor tweet, at the time we put up the child labor tweet, that was a 10. Do you know what it is now? It's a fucking 4. Because do you know what happened 3 months after the child labor tweet? The New Hampshire House of Representatives repealed most of the restrictions on child labor in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I know.
You're so right that is a 4 now.
Because everybody went on friggin' welfare during COVID, and the only way to get people into work was to open it up to kids again.
That's not the case in New Hampshire. It's not getting kids into work because everyone's on welfare. New Hampshire has unemployment under 2%. The fact is there aren't enough workers for the jobs here, even with everyone on welfare. We also have the lowest welfare spending per capita in the country and the lowest poverty rate in the country.
It's workforce participation.
New Hampshire has the highest workforce participation in the country as well. And McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts, even though we also have no minimum wage in New Hampshire, have signs in the windows: help desperately needed. Start tomorrow, $18 an hour.
Right. I know that. We got $15 here in Idaho. And this is one of those things. And Spike actually talked about this before. The idea of having activists and having candidates.
Right.
Okay, you have the activists. They're coming out with a radical. What is total freedom? What is bodily autonomy? What is the sovereign citizen? How can we create a society that is total anarchy, where there are no rulers, no gods, no masters, just people getting along? Yet at the same time, we need people with policy that can talk the pragmatic. Reason why is because 95%, you guys got the 5%. That's fucking nailed.
Right.
95% of the rest of the population of the United States is scared to fucking death of freedom, and they don't understand how they can get from where they are, where they got a 9-to-5 job that they go to every day that pays them enough money to go to the store and pay their rent, so that they can feed their kids. They're scared that anarchy takes that away from them. So how do you create that path?
Karn Ross. Here's the thing. It's not Justin Amash. It's not Rand Paul. It's not Thomas Massey. It's not Nick Sarwark. It's not even Spike Cohen. It's not Larry Sharp. Unfortunately, it's none of the people we have here. Ron Paul might have stood a chance, but the difference between what Ron Paul did and what Karn Ross did was action and evidence. Ron Paul was brilliant. He spoke. He inspired, but he never actually did it. Karn Ross, if you're not familiar with Karn Ross, he was a former British diplomat with the British Foreign Services. He was a British assistant undersecretary of state to Iraq pre-2003. After that, he was detailed to the Iraqi Weapons Inspections Program for the United Nations from the British Foreign Services. Karen Ross was part of the weapons inspections teams and oversaw them as a British diplomat. And in 2004, Karen Ross blew the whistle on the CIA and MI6 for inventing weapons of mass destruction and making them up as an excuse to sell the war. And he was subtly terminated from the British Foreign Services, let go, lost his pension, kicked out, everything. There's a great documentary on what he did after that, because he just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. Nobody has heard from him. A former world-renowned diplomat who testified before the UN in New York about weapons of mass destruction fraud just dropped off the face of the earth. I did a show with him about 10 months ago, and like, he was super easy to reach. Like, I just messaged him on Twitter. I'm like, hey, can we talk about this? He's like, that. A documentary came out last year called The Accidental Anarchist, and it's how a former high-ranking British Foreign Services diplomat got turned into an anarchist after his experiences as a whistleblower during the Iraq War, working for the UN, and now for full time, he runs a NGO nonprofit that travels the world helping non-governmental, independent, and autonomous anarchist communities set themselves up and establish diplomatic and community relations with each other. And he acts as their ambassador and advocates on their behalf with governments.
Yeah.
He's done it. He has done the work. He has seen it happen, and he has helped make it happen. And he is incredibly articulate, well-spoken, and an incredible speaker. We need someone like him. People who actually do the work. It's not about politicians. It's not about people running for office, because they're never going to accomplish it. We need.
It is literally the actual work. It is the actionists. It's the people who go out. I got a friend who talks about an individual, Natalie Topa. Okay, Natalie Topa is a regenerative agriculture specialist that does a lot of work with tribes down in Africa. Right. You know, goes into these war-torn areas where there's refugee flights going on. You know, people are leaving because of a combination of ecological issues, war issues, manufactured scarcity in these communities. And she goes in, she brings a team with her along with a set of bodyguards, and for about 1 year just goes full authoritarian and teaches everybody everything they need to do to learn how to fucking take care of themselves. And then she leaves.
That was Marx's argument. Before you could get to your socialist anarchy utopia, you needed a totalitarian communist state.
But the beautiful thing about this is she keeps it so fucking small.
Right. That's the problem. I've made this argument before.
It's a community at a time. You know,
I've made this argument before. The most perfect form of government that humanity has ever conceived of, even better than anarchy, is authoritarian communism. The problem is it does not scale. It works perfectly at the smallest level of governing unit possible, the family.
Well, in a sense, yeah, it does at that lowest level. But at the same time, you know, you start taking a look at, I'm trying to remember the name of the community size. You know, there's it's a variation on Hobbes's stuff about how big a community.
It's like 88 people.
Well, it's a little bit more than
88
that.
connections. Well, like there's something, because we ran into an issue trying to grow a community center in New Hampshire, where we noticed every time we got too big, people kind of peeled off and started a new group. And it was always around that number.
You know, there's these target numbers that are about the ideal community size. You know, Indigenous Americans, you know, did it. You know, how big can a tribe get before you start dealing with certain issues of hierarchical, you know, as opposed to
Dunbar's number? It's 150.
Yeah. Hobbes has got a number. There's another social scientist that created a number that goes up to like 5,000. You know, you got different tiers. How long before you start getting hierarchical? You know, but this is one of those things. She goes in and she actually teaches a community that's been stripped of their cultural heritage, teaches them how to do Dunbar. Yes. The Dunbar circles, Mike. Thank you. Right. And she goes in and she grabs basically one of these Dunbar-sized communities and says, I'm going to teach you how to be self-sustainable. Within a year or two, you'll be able to take care of yourself. You'll be able to raise your kids. You'll be able to have enough food. You know, you'll understand how to provide your own shelter, your own food, and then I'm gone.
Sure.
She goes in, does it, gone.
You rely on, you're relying on the benevolent dictator, and you're relying on the benevolence of the dictator. This is the argument for why Florida is not free. They're relying on the benevolence of an authoritarian governor.
I believe in individualism, individual dictatorships. Everyone,
you know, the difference is what you're doing with the power. So, like Natalie Topa, she comes in, she's the benevolent educator. Okay, she comes in, she's a teacher. She shows up, teaches what she has to teach, and then she leaves. Either they learn it or they die. She doesn't have more time for them than a year. Yeah. If you can't figure it out in a year, there's people who will. I'm going to go help them.
There's also some great innovation, like private sector, like people have just done out of the goodness of the heart for developing communities, people in Africa and shit like that.
Yes.
I saw an interesting thing where there was a group of people. There's a like an open call for a project about building things like incubators, combines, weavers, necessary farming equipment and like medical equipment and stuff. But they need designs for these things, but the only parts you're allowed to use in designing them and building them functionally are parts on a Ford Ranger. And their argument was every asshole mechanic in Africa can keep a Ford Ranger running to 500,000 miles for 40 years, but they can't keep a $200,000 incubator running. So if the $200,000 incubator at the hospital breaks, babies die. What if you just made it out of Ford Ranger parts that they already knew how to service?
It's a solid argument. I mean, take a look at the Model T.
They managed to build an off-the-shelf prenatal incubator for $300 that could be built with spare parts from Ford Ranger parts.
That's what we did with agriculture. The Model T. When we started moving the Model Ts into agriculture, started handing them out to farmers. It revolutionized agriculture, and for good or bad, it revolutionized agriculture in the U.S. And we started producing food, massive quantities of food, well above and beyond. We started making so much food they had to start paying people not to do it.
So here's one benefit I think people are going to not realize about the U.S. government's corn subsidies that we've been doing for the past freaking forever. The United States is not an exporter of corn, even though we produce like 70% of the world's corn supply, because most of the corn that's produced in the United States is used for ethanol, farm feed, and shit like that. It's not actually used for food. We actually import corn for food. However, a not insignificant, I think about like 30% of the corn grown in the United States is actually destroyed, not used for any of those purposes.
Yeah.
And farm subsidies just going to compensate farmers for destroying it. So
30% of farm subsidies, 30%.
Do you know who the largest exporter of corn and grain in the world actually is?
Russia? I don't know.
Ukraine.
Yep.
Who has not had a farm season this year and won't have corn to export this fall.
Yep.
No, they won't.
So the United States might have accidentally created enough of a freaking stockpile and surplus and foodstuffs to survive the oncoming food shortage that's going to starve Europe.
Not if we still pay them 30%. Still paying.
Yeah, we got to cut the subsidies.
We make.
See, if we could have been. Do you guys? I know you weren't. Have you guys read the Bible, or are you familiar with it? Are you familiar with the story of Joseph?
Yes, yeah.
Not Jesus' father, the other one.
The other one, the one who went to work for and told a story of 7 cows getting eaten by 7 cows.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you remember how they prepare for the famine? He tells the Pharaoh, we need to take this much of everyone's crop and just store it for 7 years, and then we'll because we're gonna have 7 years of plenty, I think, and then they have 7 years of famine. So if we had done that for the last however many years, just stored all that extra corn, and like the Egyptians did to survive in Joseph's days, then we would have been good. But unfortunately,
I want to know what kind of preservatives they were using, because corn don't last.
No, it's wheat with or grain with the Egyptians.
They were using wheat, grain, something like that, something that grew in the Levant.
If you ask Ben Carney, says that's what the pyramids were built for. So
Oh yeah.
I thought they were landing pads for alien spaceships.
Yeah, they were.
Aliens. I don't know, but aliens.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
They're telling me that people in Southeast Asia, Mexico, and Northern Africa all simultaneously came up with the idea of pyramids.
Dude, it's an easy geometric shape, you know, and that's one of those things that's absolutely crazy about the fucking bullshit that we go through with an innovation today.
Yeah.
You know, friggin' intellectual property rights. There's 30 different people who come up with the idea at the same damn fucking time, all across the US. 5 of them actually get something to the point where it can be taken to market. And one of them finally gets the intellectual property rights to it that gets bought up by a corporation who says, no, we're going to bury this shit.
Yep. Insulin. Insulin went from 30 cents a vial to $200 a vial, not because the formula changed, but because somebody bought the rights to it and argued in court that they owned exclusive rights to it and nobody was allowed to compete.
Right? You know, fucking bullshit. Yeah. So
what do you guys think about oh, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there, Joe.
Oh no, the thing is, it's activism, actionism. You know, what are we doing to take action? What are we doing to show the world that there are these communities that can be created, can exist, and that humanity can indeed be rewilded to the point where we don't need the larger architecture in order to sustain communities.
Well,
I like it. Speaking of larger architecture, what do you think of 9/11 being old enough to drink this coming weekend?
Well, I want to answer Joe's question because Joe's asked what we're doing to prove that concept. Mm-hmm. Joe, have you heard of the Free State Project?
I've also heard of a bear and a libertarian walk into a bar.
Right, but we already talked about that.
We already debunked that.
We did.
Yeah.
You know, and this is one of those things that's great, Justin, because you're talking about what we're doing, allowing U.S. citizens to create what tribal communities around the world are doing in the absence of benevolent dictators. You know, you're creating an opportunity for them to go in and establish what we're going to do. We're going to do by consensus. Those people who don't consent to what we're doing by consent, they can go do something else.
It's not even that. Here in New Hampshire, the way it's done has been straight decentralization. Like, I get angry with people all the time. I tell people all the time they need to read Swarmwise by Eric Valkvinch. It is the political manifesto of action for the 21st century. Like how the Icelandic Pirate Party went from being 5 angry dudes on an online message board to the 3rd largest political party in Europe in 8 years. Is insane, but they did it without having a single leader. They called it a leaderless revolution. Nobody made orders. Nobody gave strings. All it was empowering people to act on their own behalf and what they thought was for the betterment of the organization and the movement. And that's what we've done in New Hampshire. We don't have people giving orders. We don't have people telling people what to do. It's straight up like every time somebody asks me, he's like, why hasn't anybody done this? I'm like, I don't know, fucking do it. Anytime like Dennis Pratt comes up with an idea and somebody will do it. This is not a top-down hierarchical organization that's directing the libertarian migration and directing the libertarian fight in New Hampshire. It's like 10,000 people all doing their own fucking thing, and it happens to be working harmoniously and happens to be shifting the culture for 1.3 million other people.
Yeah. And it's because they're doing something for themselves that benefits the community. You know, nobody's asking permission. It's like, I want to build a community center.
Sure.
5 people get together and say, let's do it.
I was arguing with one of my friends yesterday. She's a hardcore progressive Democrat. She's a state rep here in New Hampshire. She's a good friend of mine. And she was talking about how come libertarians are so want to slash welfare so badly. I'm like, because we don't want to pay taxes. She's like, well, you can't just slash welfare. I'm like, sure we can. By improving the economy, so we have a higher standard of living, a higher median wage. We have the 2nd highest median wage and the lowest poverty rate, lowest unemployment rate in the country. So we were able to slash our welfare spending to the lowest per capita in the country, saving ourselves taxes.
That's the key, caring about the median wage more than the minimum wage.
Right. Like we reduced welfare spending. We reduce welfare spending not by cutting people off and hurting them, but by helping raise them out of poverty.
Yeah. Yeah, the people with the median wage, when they're not paying taxes, they fucking donate. They set up homeless shelters. They make sure that there's counselors available to get people jobs. And they're actually doing this in their community. They're not sending $3 billion to Washington, D.C. so that Washington, D.C. can send back $3 million or even $30 million. You lose so much running it all the way up the chain just for them to disperse it back. Just keep it in the fucking community. Don't tax it in the first place.
And I actually think people need to apply this logic not just to like activism in their daily lives and in their communities, but in their political activism too. Like the fucking Libertarian Party. It should be a decentralized, bottom-up approach to political activism and shifting culture. Like I had a great talk last week with Eric Cordova. He's from New York. Eric's a great friend. He's a great libertarian. He's very principled. He's pragmatist. He is not radical. He is not Mises. And he's someone who is he does not like New Hampshire's Libertarian Party of New Hampshire messaging on Twitter. However, he said the words while we were talking, as much as he dislikes it, the answer isn't to censor New Hampshire because it's working for New Hampshire. The answer is to drown out New Hampshire's message in your local market and community if you have a problem with it.
Yeah.
Be better instead of complaining about what other people are doing.
Yeah.
And this was my same... Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is my same message like before the takeover. What I never agreed with on the takeover is that the whole party had to change or the whole party had to be better. Like I thought the National Party was just pretty lame before. They never said anything interesting. And I think they're better now. But as far as like state affiliates go or candidates, I made the point, and Larry Sharp and I talked about this before when I've had him on my show, that if you're running in Manhattan versus if you're running in Houston, Texas, as a libertarian, you're going to have completely different issues that you're tackling and a completely different messaging that you're going to have to take on. So there is this thing, and I love Ron Paul. I've met him a couple times, had him on my show. It was great. I have tons of respect for the guy. I think idolizing him has been a mistake. Like making him, and Justin, I know you'll agree with me on this.
Yeah.
I think like making him the ultimate goal of every libertarian is just a mistake, because he was great for what he did for his time and everything. Like he is, his 2008 run, his 2012 run changed millions of lives, but we're not there anymore. Like, I don't even think the next libertarian guy who runs for president should be like Ron Paul. We're in a different area now. Like it's post Trump has been president. He's also been raided by the FBI. We've had lockdowns. Like things are fucking insane now. So to act like we need to all act exactly like Ron Paul and have his exact messaging, I don't agree. Like I think New Hampshire should be way crazier than Ron Paul. Like we should be making him look like a moderate.
Larry Sharp himself is actually a perfect example of this. People, Free Staters used to always complain when Larry Sharp was first getting big and like going on Kennedy and when he went on Rogan, how come he don't want to New Hampshire? Why is he wasting his time in New York? What's he doing? Larry Sharp is almost too radical of a libertarian to be running in New York. But here's the problem. If Larry Sharp was in New Hampshire, he wouldn't be radical enough of a libertarian to run as a Republican.
No. And that's one of those things. You talk about the idea of balkanization, the idea of, a national divorce, global homo, the global homogenization of culture, the U.S., we've been deculturalized. You and I, we talk about an awful lot of the same things, but at the same time, each and every one of our states runs with a different issue. I'm living in Idaho, one of 13 states with, a 6-week abortion ban. One of the states with the highest abortion ban. I'm one of 12 states that marijuana is still 100% illegal. New Hampshire's got abortion. New Hampshire's got weed. New York's got weed. California's got weed.
New Hampshire has an abortion ban. New Hampshire has an abortion ban. It doesn't get talked about. It's a 24-week late-term abortion ban. But guess how many late-term abortions past 24 weeks there have been in New Hampshire prior to that ban in the previous 5 years?
Less than one, right?
One. It was one in 5 years. And it was a medical emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you guys are all like arguing about that stuff. We're over here like, this is why I moved back to New Hampshire, because in Utah, they were trying to pass a bill to ban pornography on cell phones and mobile devices. And I was just like, I mean, say what you want about pornography, but it's just like, why are we focusing on this right now? This seems like so out to lunch. And then New Hampshire was voting on whether or not we should be allowed to vote on seceding from the Union. And I was just like, all right, I got to go back. Like, there's just no excuse for being here anymore. So, like, it's to your point, Justin. Like, the Overton window's in a different position in New Hampshire.
It's literally a different position. You know, Idaho's decided that. Well, some people have decided that Idaho is going to be the center of the new Christian nationalist revolution. You know, we're going to have the Greater Theocratic Republic of Idaho, you know, take over the Pacific Northwest. You know, and it's like, no, I've seen what you guys want. You know, that's not justice. That's not fair. And the last thing a lot of us want to do, you know, is get ground under the boot of some Christian nationalist who thinks that, you know, 90% of the good things in life should be illegal.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, like, people would think you are a Nazi if you're in a different place of the country. Like, if you are in Manhattan, people be like, who is this crazy, staunch conservative weirdo hanging out with us? But then when you talk to people like conservatives in Texas or something, they're like, oh, this is a degenerate hippie. We want nothing to do with him. Like my friend.
And that's the fucking truth. Because
I got a friend. I've got a friend who lives
legal medical.
Yeah, I've got a friend who lives in. I got a friend who lives in Georgia, and he's a liberal for Georgia, but in New York, when he sees like a 5-year-old going to a drag show or whatever, he'd be like, "What the fuck is this? Like, what is wrong with you?" You know, and that's the thing. Like, it's different dependent on what your state is.
There are blue counties in Georgia. There's a blue county in Georgia that has mandatory gun ownership as a county ordinance.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a different place. Like some of these people who like live in Manhattan and have been there for the last couple, like Top Lobster. I love Top Lobster, but he left Manhattan where there are these legit crazy, insane Democrats, just absolutely insane. And so when he hears people like Joe say, well, the Republicans aren't really much better than the Democrats, he's like, what are you talking about? You're insane. These people like wanted me to force vaccinate my kids, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but you don't live in Idaho where the Democrat owns an AR-15 and just wants to be allowed to smoke weed. You know, like it's just a different fucking place.
That's literally it. You know, we go to a Black Lives Matter rally. None of those kids there want to burn down the town. They live there. They're all growing up there. You know, they just want to be able to roll a doobie in downtown Boise.
Right.
You know,
I do think like as great as New Hampshire is becoming as the closest thing to a libertarian utopia in the United States, I think we have an unsung opportunity with Vermont next door, where once we have like really like locked in the linchpin of libertarianism in New Hampshire, we have to start sending all of our lefty libertarians over to Vermont to set up their communes and farms.
Yeah.
And like that way we can swear off. We can be a swear state again and secede with New Hampshire and
you
Vermont.
Just go across the river if you want to get stuff from the communes. And if they want to buy stuff from us, they come across the river. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. No, we can set up farmers markets in Keene.
I like it. And we're going to
I've seen that political compass, man. I've seen that political compass.
We're going to annex Maine too.
Yeah.
I mean, they're chill. We might, there's some liberals in Kennebunkport that'll freak out. But
there's a movement called Beta England, not New England, Beta England. There's a movement out there that somebody tried to start. In
Beta, BETA, or better without a
better with a Boston accent.
Okay, yeah.
Beta.
Where it's New Hampshire, it's Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island.
Oh, based.
Like
I'm down with
as
that.
The fucking Beta England. And I'm sitting here looking at the map. I'm like, I got some tweaks I want to make. They're like, what? I'm like, okay, I want to take Portsmouth, New Hampshire, up to Portland, Maine, and carve that out. We're going to trade it to Massachusetts in exchange for everything west of 495 in Massachusetts.
I agree.
We're going to take Burlington in Vermont. We're going to carve it out, and we're going to give them independence as a totalitarian communist city-state on the St. Lawrence River in exchange for waterway access on the riverway.
It's going to
for
be like the
our trade
Minsk
access.
II agreement, basically. You know,
like-
you guys have autonomy.
Well, we get a port. Like
Exactly, it's exactly the same.
right. Yeah. Like, and I'm like, those little tweaks right there. I mean, that's about it, I think. Yeah. Or we can even give Burlington to Montreal. Like, they'd get along better.
Yeah, you know,
I like it.
it's
Well, then Joe, he's going to be doing the Free State of Jefferson out there with, you know, have you seen that thing? It's like Idaho and
I actually
part of
don't like-
Washington and
Greater
Northern-
we've got
Idaho, they
about
call it.
3 different concepts out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and almost every one of them's worse than the last one. You got the Greater Theocratic State of Idaho, which is the whole Christian nationalist readout, you know, dominionist thing. You know, all the Christians will be there telling you, you know, how to live your life. You know, the next thing is of course, the Free State of Jefferson, which is the same thing, only without the Christian nationalism. And the one I actually like most is the Free Cascadia. Because the Free Cascadia just basically balkanizes the entire Pacific Northwest. And each little eco-zone turns into its own little city-state, you know, so that you got the fisheries and hatcheries up north, and then the plains where you're growing the canola oil, you know, in north along the end. Then you got the big mountain range that's turned into thorium mines, you know, so that the
I do think we need a better word than balkanization, though. And
well, we do.
All the credit to AJ Olding for this. It was a Twitter exchange I saw where somebody had asked, like on Twitter, I forget what the question was. It was something along the lines of like, "How do you fix the political division problems in the United States today?" And AJ responded just with balkanization. That was his answer. And somebody replied to him with like, "Oh yeah, because that worked out so well with all the pictures of like the mass graves and the tortures and the mass murders in Bosnia and Herzegovina." I'm like, "Ah, fucking fair." And AJ just responded to them with, "Okay, friendly balkanization."
By the way, Joe, I got to ask, is Idaho really just a surveying error? Is that why it exists? I've heard that before, that Montana was supposed to abut with Washington as like kind of a straight line, and then they fucked it up and are like, oh shit, there's extra territory there. Is that true?
There's a lot of bullshit that went into the making of Idaho. Yeah, because they were going in, they were trying to take a look at, you know, the whole idea of states in the Pacific Northwest, you know, the Northwest territories, you know, because there was like a Frisia state at one point, which was supposed to be this great white nation, you know, that was going to open up as part of the Jeffersonian thing, you know, where you weren't allowed to be black in the Pacific Northwest. Only it ended up getting absorbed with the westward expansion, and some president decided, no, sea to shining sea, that's what we're going to do. And, you know, then the Civil War happened. And when they were doing the division, they were trying to figure out where the areas were supposed to be, and they came up with some screwy stuff, because originally, you know, all the western states were supposed to be square. They were supposed to be square. No rivers defining borders, you know, it's just going to be a square chunk on a map, 4 sides, you know, like Utah, almost like Wyoming, you know,
right.
A couple of the others that just happen to be square. It was all the Pacific Northwest territories were supposed to be square. And then they ended up taking a look at it and went, you know what, this continental divide thing really sort of screws up being able to get from the western side of Montana to the eastern side of Montana, where the capital is in Butte. So let's go ahead and give that over to the Pacific North. Yeah. So yeah, in a lot of ways, it was just, you know, bad negotiation in how we ended up with the territorial markings, because there is no reason Idaho should exist in its current form. No reason whatsoever. It's an 8-hour drive from Boise to northern Idaho. The only place it's longer to drive is from one end of Texas to the other.
It's true. I've done that drive too. Do not recommend. Interstate 10.
The I-5 corridor, you know, the California I-5 corridor. Yeah, it's a long corridor, but it's a straight shot. You know,
yeah,
you can do that in what, 6 hours straight down I-5 in California.
It's probably pretty close to 8. I don't know. But yeah, Idaho, you're right. It doesn't have an interstate that just shoots straight up at it. Fucking, you got to go up. Yeah, no, it takes a while.
It's friggin' mountain drive, switchback.
I was doing that drive on January 6th, actually. I was leaving. I remember I was still in I was still in Utah when the insurrection started, and
ended.
Yeah, I was getting.
You know the funny thing about that? I'm here in Boise, and I show up at the Capitol steps, and we got all of our Trump fans down there on the Capitol steps, and we got our grandma, one of our Liberty Dog grandmothers, who loves to go up and do all the filming and do the antagonizing of all the leftists here in Boise on the Capitol steps every time they do a rally. And she'd actually gone to Washington, D.C. And, I'm sitting there talking to, one of them, and they're going, she got in the Capitol. She's in there with her camera in the Capitol. And it's like one of the videos that she actually got was of them breaking the glass on one of the doors and her commentary going, yeah, we did that with Ammon Bundy in Boise. He's in prison right now. She's got a 6-month vacation in a federal minimum security facility at 65 years old. But that was one of the. It's like, wow. So it's like, I know an insurrectionist. I'm part of her video library.
I think it's a more solemn date than the one that's coming up this weekend. Actually, dude, last year Kamala Harris's speech, like 3 days that live in infamy: December 7th, 1941, September 11th, 2001, and January 6th, 2021. And I was just like,
you know what?
I couldn't believe it.
There is not a single one of those that should live in infamy in any way, shape, or form. Okay, the attack on Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor wasn't even a fucking state. Hawaii wasn't a state. It was still an occupied territory.
And it was not a surprise attack.
No,
also Hawaii. I'm just saying, Hawaii is the only state in the Union that was conquered by military force and joined involuntarily.
Surprising, but that's
we gave them democracy, Justin.
We gave them a fruit company.
Yeah, we locked up their queen too.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, Hawaii wasn't even conquered by the U.S. military acting as the U.S. military. Hawaii was conquered by U.S. Marines who were deployed to Hawaii to rescue the CEO of a fruit company who fraudulently claimed that he was being held hostage in order to lure them there to join his mercenary forces in overthrowing the queen.
Right? Yeah, Pearl Harbor was a planned attack. Yep. We knew it was happening. There's no reason Pearl Harbor should live in infamy. It does, because that's propaganda we've been sold for 70 years now.
Yeah.
9/11, we all know it was an inside job. So why is it living in infamy?
Justin's tweet coming Sunday.
Oh, you'll see. It'll be great.
Yeah. In 1/6.
How about this one? The final one. A day that should live in infamy. A day that libertarians should live in infamy. And to circle back on all your square state bullshit, river borders are very important, Joe. Okay.
Yes,
river borders matter. Are either of you familiar with the Ballad of Carl Draga?
No.
Carl Draga was a New Hampshire man back in the 1990s. Was operative pronoun there, and he was a landowner who cared for his homestead very deeply, and his homestead's natural boundary on his deed was the river. And after a big storm, the riverbank collapsed, and he lost about 20 feet of his property line to the river. And he wanted to put it back. So he got an excavator, got some fill, and he started repairing the river to its natural course after the storm. The state of New Hampshire sent environmental people, said, oh, you can't do that. You're interfering with wildlife and the nature. He's like, no, I'm putting it back. Like, I'm restoring it to where it was before the storm. And so they fined him. And he crumpled it up and threw it away. And continued to work. Then they came back, fined him again. Then they came back with a state trooper, fined him again. He shot the state trooper, shot the environmental agent, proceeded to go downtown, Found the judge that issued the warrant, shot the judge.
Oh,
Found
shit.
Found the reporter that wrote the article about how he was damaging the river, shot the reporter. And then led the New Hampshire State Police on a high-speed chase all the way to Bloomfield, Vermont, where he died in a shootout with the Vermont State Police. All because the state wouldn't respect his property rights over a river boundary.
And what date was this?
That was August 19th, 1997.
August 19th, 1997. Wow.
Yeah. In fact, way back in the day, way back in the day of three years ago before COVID, they had announced they were going to be filming a movie called The Ballad of Carl Draga. And they were going to film it on site in Colebrook, New Hampshire, where everything happened. And I was super excited. I'm like, oh my God, that's based as fuck. It's going to be great. And then I saw like the website and everything, and the dedication was to the brave men and women of law enforcement who were killed by a madman in Colebrook. I'm like, fuck these people. They're going to write a hit piece on Carl Draga. And the production got canceled because of COVID.
Good.
So,
Good.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but no, it is. We've been here for over 2 hours. This has been fun. I love No Agenda Nights. This has been great. You guys are also fun every time. Thank you, everybody, for watching, coming in. Anything either of you guys want to leave off on?
No. So about 2 weeks ago, I dropped out of the race.
I heard. We haven't actually talked about the LP drama because it's bullshit nonsense.
Yeah, I don't care. I just want to say Idaho Joe is, I think, the third candidate I've ever given money to, and he dropped out. So
yeah, sorry about that. But it was literally, I couldn't keep trying to push my message while, the guys who were running the party here in the state of Idaho were saying New Hampshire's based.
Dude, we are.
Well, you are.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. That's not the message that belongs in the state of Idaho. You guys shift your Overton window. I need to shift my Overton window.
Right.
And I can't shift my Overton window if they're going, repeal the 19th and, doing what they were doing. So it's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm done. I'm out. So right now I've shifted my focus. Medical marijuana in the state of Idaho. We're going to get it legalized this time. Going to get it on the ballot in 2024. That's my big push. And working on bodily autonomy and individual sovereignty 100%. This is one of those things where it literally is fuck the 19th because the 19th never should have been fucking needed. Own it from the get-go.
I'm trying to find a legislator to submit a legalized heroin bill so we can shift the Overton window so we can end up with LSD and mushrooms.
You got to embrace our strategy just with a different message, Joe. Yeah. We've got the right strategy, but you just got to push the Overton window, which like with us, it's, warmongers should be, anything. There's not much that's off limits.
Our stakes are so much lower because we've won so much already.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things. Idaho, it's one of those things. We got a progressive base. We got people who want change. They just don't want it too fast.
Ugh.
Okay? They want to take it slow because they've seen unintended consequences. They've seen what happens when you change shit too fucking fast. They want to change. They just don't want it fucking overnight.
Here's how you convince those people, Joe. Here's how you convince those people that they need to move fast. You tell them a story about the two different abolition groups in pre-Civil War America. Prior to the Civil War, there was two different, distinct, and separate abolition movements happening in the North. And they were opposed to each other. They did not get along because they wanted to end slavery in different ways. Mm-hmm. There was one group, the first group, which they thought abolishing slavery outright would be really bad for the economy, so we couldn't do it outright. We had to gradually do it, and they proposed reforms and laws that would make the lives of slaves better, limit corporal punishment, allow them to stay with their families, better food, better housing, better clothing, education for slaves, and the opportunity to purchase the opportunity to purchase their freedom after a term of service. The other group advocated for outright abolition immediately, and they absolutely fucking despised that first group because every progressive measure just made people more comfortable with the institution of slavery.
Yeah.
And so every progressive measure just makes people more comfortable with the institution of slavery of the state.
And that's one of the things that I like coming back about is this is about freedom. This is about individual autonomy. We are conservative by nature just because all of a sudden you have the freedom doesn't mean you're going to use the freedom in a bad way. You know, we understand taking it slow. We understand the personal nature and learning to take personal responsibility. And you're right. You know, we do need to get rid of the progressive policies that just make it easier to tolerate, you know, the status quo. We need
the 19th Amendment. No,
yeah.
I'm just kidding. Sorry, Joe. I just had to throw it in there.
I know. But this is the thing. Part of the reason we are having the culture wars right now is because we've allowed the welfare state to redefine what it means to be human. You know, we have culture wars because cooperation is no longer mandatory, because the state will take and give on a whim to whoever they feel needs the welfare most. You know, people no longer have to be responsible for making sure the shit gets done. You know, farmers, they don't actually have to produce. They're going to get paid because their crops got destroyed. They got the insurance plan. You know, what are we doing to actually give risk back to the situation to force moderate risk management behavior pattern? We don't do it. We don't. You know, we say, we'll cover your losses. You know, it's time we stop saying we'll cover your losses and force people to do that more conservative approach while expanding freedom by making the goddamn laws go away.
All right. Wow. Fantastic point. Reed, anything you want to leave off on other than Meghan McCain should cry?
Yeah, just 9/11's coming up this weekend, so
absolutely.
Google
Dancing Israelis.com.
Yeah, that's one. Google Dancing Israelis and Saudi Arabia 28 pages, and that'll give you everything you need to know.
So, Saudi Arabia 28 pages.
If you're here in New Hampshire on 9/11, 11 a.m. Sunday morning, meet us in Concord at the State House. We will be having a rally to promote the Defend the Guard initiative here in New Hampshire. We have legislation in the House this year, which will prohibit the governor of New Hampshire from authorizing the deployment of New Hampshire National Guard and Reserve Forces without an official declaration of war from the U.S. Congress, which, if you know anything about military history, in the 246 years of sovereignty, the United States has been at war for 229 of them and has only declared war 5 times. So
that fucker right there should not be taking this fucker's National Guard.
Correct. So Defend the Guard is great legislation. There's a push to have it in the legislature or on the ballot in one way or form or another in every state in the next 2 years. New Hampshire will have it in the legislature this year. We're hoping to get a Liberty majority of the Republicans and the anti-war progressive Democrats to get a veto-proof majority on the bill. So Sununu won't even have the option to veto it. That's the hope. We'll see if it happens. There's been some neocons that have retired and aren't an issue anymore. It failed last time. We'll see if it goes well, but we need a big show of force out on Sunday. Jeremy Kaufman will be speaking. I'll be speaking. Derek Brew will be speaking. Ben Weir will be speaking. General Don Bolduc may make an appearance, may not. We'll find out. But it's going to be a good time, fun time. Come out and support your Libertarian candidates, your Libertarian Party, and the most important and probably the most achievable libertarian measure in politics for the next couple of years is Defend the Guard.
We got to be the first state to pass it, man. I would be there, but my mom's turning 60, so unfortunately I have to go to her
family first. Yeah.
Take care of the family, man. Take care of the family. That's important shit.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, leave some comments, share with your friends. And I do want to leave Joe with one bad dad joke and an inappropriate one at best. Joe, 2 potatoes are standing on a corner. Which one's a prostitute? The one with the tattoo that says Idaho. Be free, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Subversive. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to get alerted every time we go live on YouTube. And make sure to leave some comments and reviews on whatever platform you listen on to let me know what you thought of this episode. And a huge thanks and shout out to our sponsors and the awesome members of the Insurgency on Patreon. If you enjoyed this content, you can join the Insurgency on Patreon by following the links in the description for patreon.com/O'Donnell. And if you can't catch the show live, you can always catch it the next day on YouTube, Odyssey, Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, CastBox, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts every day. So until next time, everybody, be free.